Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Welcome to What is Going Om, for new thought from the edge of Om. Each week on Om Times' flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandy Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Om. Here is your host, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome. We're going to take a quick journey back through time today, back to the year 2011, when we were all looking forward to the big shift that would take us beyond 2012 into a new era, where new templates of being and experiencing ourselves would become available to us. Every month back then, today's guest would join me on air to point to the changes that were happening, what they meant, how they would be affecting us, and what we needed to do to move comfortably through that transition. Now here we are 13 years later, and back with us today to discuss how well we dismantled the old templates that were keeping us stuck, how easily or not we moved into our mastery, and to reorient our focus on this epic transitional year and beyond is intuitive, clairvoyant teacher, international speaker and author Jim Self, who is the co-founder of Mastering Alchemy, which offers practical tools, enhanced energetic skills, and the ability to remember how to step off the third dimensional game board and into the fifth dimensional experience of well-being. Jim Self, welcome back.
Sandy, it's delightful to be with you as always.
You too, Jim. I know we've done several shows since 2011, but given that many of the milestones we once looked to are now behind us and the long-awaited age of Aquarius is officially upon us, it seemed rather fitting to take a little trip back and look at what we're leaving behind and what we're diving into with the opportunities that await us this year.
Yeah, this is really exciting. And looking back has some value because back in 2012, which everybody waited for patiently coming into that period of time, something happened that we described as an upgrade of the computer's operating system. And we basically said we've been playing with I'm using computer as an analogy, an old computer and an operating system that was simply out of date. And so 2012 was this huge upgrade. And then it took from 2012 into about 2015, 16 for that new software to integrate into that. So humanity began to wake up much more fully. At the same time as it was waking up, an aspect of humanity that was really vested in what was in the past, in religion, nationality, culture, ethnicity, this is how it is, began to become troubled because they argued for their limitations and their status quo. And what you've watched from 2015, 16 into this period of time, the status quo is falling away very rapidly. But to those that are holding on to it, it's really terrifying. They're trying to make sense of something from an old position that simply cannot make sense. And so at the same time, you've got those of us who are waking up, and the vast part of the world is now waking up, are beginning to have different choices, different ahas that pop into the reality and stepping into a whole different understanding of what's possible.
Yeah. One of the problems that you frequently laid out was that most of us had no idea how to grab hold of opportunities that awaited us. Have you seen a change in that attitudes?
Well, you're seeing it, you're watching it happen. And there's an aspect of each of us, we are simply turning on. We're waking up, we're remembering, we're having ahas, we're having different understandings. It's like how you hold your point of attention. And when you hold it on something fixed, that's what you get. It's as if we've grown up wandering into a large house, let's say, and it was dark. And so we made an assumption that this is how it is. And over some period of time, some one person walked into a new room and bumped into the light switch, and the whole house illuminated. That's really pretty disruptive. On one hand, it's like, wow, look at all this. On the other hand, it is, I don't know what to do with this because I'm so vested in my history. And I think that's the conflict, or that's the challenge that we're watching humanity today run into. This whole new level of awareness is presenting itself very, very rapidly.
Well, you have been teaching the tools to help people understand this and move forward. I mean, the future's unknown. Of course, people are scared of it. They have no idea of what to expect. So they need some of these tools to help prepare themselves. But, how many people have been using those tools? You must get tired sometimes of saying the same things over and over again.
Over and over again. And it doesn't matter, because all of a sudden somebody goes, oh, wow, this is great. Why didn't you say that sooner? Even though they've heard it 50 times.
Yeah.
What you're watching right now is in a way, the question is, whose story are you? That's a funny statement. But when you begin to ask the question, who am I and what's my story? When you really look at it, a great amount of your story is made up of mom, dad, teacher, minister who said, this is right, this is wrong, this is how we do this. We talk to them, we don't talk to these, and this is how your life works. And we all said, okay. And when that process, even though we said okay, and many of those pieces that we agreed to didn't feel right, we went along with it and integrated into our reality. You're now starting to have many people all over the world challenging those original stories. And Mastering Alchemy, the value of Mastering Alchemy is it gave you a framework to begin to take a look at, I'm not okay, and realize that was somebody else's gift to you one day, where they said, you're not okay, you're stupid, you're never going to succeed, nobody likes you, and I don't know why I had you anyway. Pretty dramatic statement. So somebody hands this to you, and then we walk around for the rest of our life saying, what's wrong with me? But when you can begin to turn the light on in that house and recognize this isn't mine, the ability then to remove it from your perception of the world starts to be much, much more comfortable, and you begin to recognize who you are.
Well, the kids of today don't really have much of a problem with that. They are not going to accept all of the teacher, preacher, minister, parent ideology. But for the rest of us, we've got to work at it a bit. We've got a unraveling to do in order to.
We've spent a long time building our story.
Yeah.
The kids today, they don't have a story. And the kids today, as you and I have talked and many others have talked, they're wired different. Their belief system is different. Their orientation to consciousness is different than the baby boomers or even the millennials. And so, or the Gen X's. And so you're watching this evolution present itself in the light right in front of you. The question is, how do you choose?
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the expanding multidimensional consciousness that is presenting itself.
So how we're basically approaching this right now, one of the things that gets in the way of how we perceive the world is we label things. Humans love labeling things. And so in my conversation with consciousness, I'm going to call it consciousness, consciousness equals God, Allah, whatever you wish to call that. The minute you take the word God off consciousness, everything begins to present itself as new choices, moving into that house with a light turned on. And so you're starting to watch this aspect of consciousness present itself without labels, and people are beginning to hear it. One of the most recent parts of the conversation I have is consciousness said There is nothing artificial about intelligence. But it said we have to approach it from two directions. One is all of you who are waking up are just all of a sudden finding yourself with new ideas, new considerations, new thoughts, new ways of doing something. War, domination, imposition, greed, advantage, competition, all of a sudden are just not acceptable ways of life. And we begin to move to that. But what consciousness is saying is, for all of those of you who can hear, this is beginning to be understood. For those who can't hear, we're working in technology. And so you're watching these new technologies coming on faster and faster. And what you're going to start to find is people are going to be wearing these glasses and they're going to be seeing, clairvoyance, all kinds of things that they never saw before. They're going to put an earbud in their ear and they're going to all of a sudden have conversations with, where did that come from? And consciousness is going to start to talk through those technologies. So you're watching this evolution come about in a very, very accelerated manner.
And completely differently than any of us ever anticipated back then.
Oh, the thing about each of us is our imagination is the cornerstone to our creativity and our opportunity. And imagination was taken away from us as a kid. Now this light beginning to unfold and beginning to have awareness in everybody's space is you're beginning to imagine. You're beginning to make up stories. You're beginning to make believe again. And in that make believe, you remove the labels and the blockages and the preventions that say, no, don't stop, you can't do there. The parent says, I don't give you permission. But what we're realizing is permission belongs to us. It's, I have permission. And that's expansive.
Yes, indeed. How have the tools and the techniques that you offer in Mastering Alchemy evolved over the last few decades?
Well, it started out a little bit challenging because you're saying to people, your story is not your story, or you don't have to hold on to that, I'm not okay, or what's wrong with me. And so what began was, here, let us present you with a platform over here that you can stand on and feel. Things like certain, capable, gracious are heart vibrations. And when you begin to feel those, you're no longer in the same place as angry, rage, resentful, I'm not okay. And so that platform began to be more and more understood. It began to be put more and more in the ethers. And when you start to realize that you can define yourself in such a way that you're observing the world around you, but you don't have to allow the world to both dominate you or run their energy through you. When you begin to start to step away and own graciousness, kindness, commanding my presence, and you feel those, that alignment of strength begins to be re-noticed. You see, the heart never leaves you. We leave the heart. And so when you start to find joy and ease and beauty and buoyancy and light, certain, capable, gracious, and you have permission to be that, that is a very different attention point or point of observation to see the world through, a lens, than I'm not okay and I don't deserve, my mother told me that. Getting past that is what has been very expansive over the last 15 years of mastering alchemy.
You teach about words, and you've used words just now that many people will dismiss because words get overused, words get different connotations attached to them. But you're talking about words in a whole other way. And you were talking about words like that long before anyone else. Now I'm meeting people, hearing people talking about words in a completely different way as a vibration and energy.
Yeah.
It's not just a label, it is an energy. I mean, we look at, Masaru Emoto's work and Veda Austin's work with water.
Yes.
and words and thoughts and beliefs. And we're seeing this in so many other arenas. Say a little bit more about, because it's really hard to change people's ideas about this,
It
but
is.
the value of
Yeah.
words.
So what is a word? A word is a utterance. It's a sound tone. It's a vibration with a label. Them, happy, certain, capable, angry. Words with labels, sounds with labels. But what happens that we don't understand yet in general is thoughts are electrical, emotions are magnetic. And that's one of the most important statements that I can make. And yet it sounds like, so what? So when you have a word, you look at something and what we do unconsciously, we say, well, that makes me really angry. And so we put a label on an event, but we also attach an emotion to the word. So I'm being angry. Well, I have a word, a thought, and I have an emotion attached to it. And then what the person says is, this really makes me angry. They make me angry. And so it's like creating an electromagnetic field. You begin to wrap the emotion around the word. It's like creating a motor. The more you wrap the wire around the bar of steel, the more the magnetic field begins to be very pronounced. And so the more I live my life from, they make me angry, I'm not okay, this upsets me, you basically take a word and you attach an electromagnetic emotion to it. And so the vibration becomes very intense. And what we do is we see something, we see it again, we see it again, we create a belief. And then we see it again and we make it into a habit. And then the habit becomes unconscious and repetitive. And so I'm angry, I'm angry, I'm angry. And after a while, you can't even remember what you were angry about. But that electromagnetic field, it doesn't go away. Law of attraction, what you put your attention on, I, the universe who adores you, will never second guess you, will give you exactly what you put your attention on. But what we do is I'm angry, I don't like it. I put it into my backpack and I try to forget it. But the vibration of the word and the emotion are very prominent still in the body and your belief system.
And as we know, emotions can create chemistry, and
Exactly.
eventually they can make us ill. I mean, Louise Hay was saying years ago, if you're angry, watch your liver.
Well, you have 4 steps. It's your spiritual space. You're walking along and you're in ease and you're happy. And somebody says, you have a funny nose, and you immediately drop into a mental place. This doesn't sound good. And then you drop into emotional. This is not good. And the body tightens up. And then somebody says, oh, you have chocolate ice cream on your nose. It's funny. And you go, oh, okay. But did your shoulders drop? And over time, I began to hold on to, I'm not okay in the emotion, mental, and then it drops into the physical, creates irritation, inflammation, rigidity, and the word becomes dis-ease. And all it is I believe I'm not okay. I have a funny nose. And we walk around with that forever.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how, as more people are waking up, we are finding that the media, particularly, is reporting more things that make us angry, more things that make us scared, more things that make us sad, more things that actually are designed to take our frequency down.
Yeah. So we're in a massive evolution, a tremendous shift in consciousness. And this light is beginning to be more and more prominent, like I said at the beginning. And there is that 3D power structure. So one of the things that happens is we're moving from, let's call it a 3D game board into a 5D game board. And I've said all along, these dimensions, third, fourth, fifth dimension, They have rules and they have structures to them. And in that third dimensional game, the rules are linear time. See, time is an application. It's not a fixed concept. There's 5 different configurations of present time. But linear time, I look to my past to determine my future. Third dimension, duality, right, wrong, good, bad. Conditionality, there's nothing unconditional in the third dimension. Very rigid box is that third dimension. Let's jump to the fourth dimension, is a non-physical space. It's all thought form. There's nothing physical in the fourth dimension. But the fifth dimension is about well-being. In the fifth dimension, you can't take your baggage from the third dimension to the fifth dimension on your way home. In the fifth dimension, everything, there's no fear. There's no words like trust, don't even exist in the fifth dimension because there's nothing to distrust. And so when you begin to play in this fifth dimensional space, which is unfolding, you start to find this sense of well-being, and the body begins to relax. The holding on to I'm angry begins to get softer and has more room to dissipate. So that third dimensional game board is breaking up, and you're watching it, media, politics, all of the things going on. We're in a massive evolution of consciousness. And so the 3D game is cracking, breaking up, falling apart. And that makes it very uncomfortable for those who are arguing for status quo, their own limitations, their own fears. But those of us, and it's beginning to be a majority of the planet, is stepping into well-being. Now, that's hard to see when you've got Gaza and you've got wars in Russia and Ukraine and all of the inequalities that are happening. But under the surface, everybody is beginning to wake up. And so a lot of what you're seeing right now is it can't continue to go on the way it's been going on. And so it's cracking and breaking up. Many, many more are starting to step into a space of well-being. And when you take your attention off of what was, and I'm not okay, and I don't deserve, and you begin to build this platform of words, certain, capable, gracious, a sense of seniority, all of a sudden there's a strength that allows you to realize I'm in the world, but I'm not of that world. And that is what the transition is at the moment.
It's interesting that, if we look carefully, all of those headlines, all of the wars, all of the challenges, that are facing the world today, that's not what the people want. That's what a few individuals or governments want.
Yes.
So, we've been saying for years that if the people, if we understood that we have the power, not they, this would go away.
Well, it will, but in that construct of the rigidity, the third dimension falling apart, we'll call it, you're watching this whole awareness play out. And in one way, it's doing us a favor. Like you watch the US Congress and US political structure, it's absurd. I mean, if you can just take a step back and not be engaged with the sides, the fact that they want border control and then they shut down their own asking for border control. And you watch all this, but in this case, the American people, if you look at all the surveys of what do you want, it's pretty clear. I don't want guns. I don't want war. I want people to be able to communicate. This inequity in the 1% is bizarre. And yet nobody's really in agreement with it except that grouping of very small groups of people. But media, I'm becoming more convinced media, what it is the controlling game of the whole thing right now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that is, as clear as day. As clear as day. I was reading something yesterday that said one of the right-wing new channels in England had paid something like £66,000 in fees to members of the Conservative Party who came on for interviews, and something like £1,100 for the Labour Party. I mean,
Sure.
it is so in your face, you know.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
question is, what are we going to do about it?
Well, but one of the things we do is we usually wait until the bridge crashes before we say, oh, we need to fix the bridge, even though we've been saying the bridge is going to crash for years and years and years, and nobody maintains it or does anything. And that's really where we are right now. It's almost, how far are you willing to let this go before we really stand up and speak out? And the challenge is, you're not presented with a good set of alternatives, because in the case of politics, both the liberal, the conservative sides are still arguing for the past. There's no two people sitting down going, okay, look, this is a challenge. What do we do? If that was to happen, a whole lot of new considerations would come onto the table. But when you're arguing for the past and the power and the politics and the right and wrong and parties, which is, I've never understood parties, but it's just basically duality, third dimension, conflict, right and wrong, mine and yours. And we're waiting too long on one hand, and we're probably right on time to let the whole game crumble and an amazing new game to come about.
And actually, this is the year for that to happen. I know that you had a conversation with Pam Gregory recently, and, Pam's YouTube videos have soared in viewers because she's speaking to what everybody is feeling, what everybody wants. And in the coming year, which we'll discuss in the second half of the show, we're going to get all the help we need from the cosmos.
Yes, very much so. And you're watching this whole unfolding right in front of your face, setting up for the next act to be perceived. Yeah.
So we're going to take a short break now. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and my guest today is intuitive clairvoyant teacher, international speaker, author, and co-founder of Mastering Alchemy, Jim Self, whose teachings, tools, and programs are instrumental in helping thousands of people around the world remember how to step off the third dimensional game board and into the fifth dimensional experience of well-being. Still to come, why April will be the biggest month of this year, and is it time to meet our galactic relatives? Stay tuned.
Om Times TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times' flagship radio show, What Is Going On? And as an author, editor, and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who have walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees, and no BS. Just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Jim Self. It's interesting how back in 2011, we were looking at 2012 as being the big moment, but it's taken another 12 years. And here we are with the big moments due to come on stream this year. Pam Gregory has been saying that this solar eclipse that we're having on the 8th of April is going to be absolutely massive. And there are a number of other things around it that are really, igniting massive change, massive awakenings. She's talked about people having physical Kundalini awakenings because of the energy going through their body. That's how big it's going to be. But also about we're going to have a lot more galactic conversations this year.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And the place where you can start looking at this is the sun. The sun is very active right now in ways that the scientists are perplexed because there are new cycles that seem to be happening. You're getting a tremendous amount. I think you've had 7 X flares in the last 2.5 weeks. So you're getting all this new electromagnetic radiation passing through you. And it is coming from these galactic waves, stepping down into the sun, stepping down into the earth, stepping down into humanity. And so it's all about expansion. It's all about evolution. It's all about opening up and remembering yourself. And so all my communication says it's about to happen in a very large way. So it's an exciting time that's about to occur.
Well, it's interesting because there are so many things that are converging at the same time. I mean, as you said before, we've waited a long time for this, but it is the perfect moment. One of the things that impressed me recently was an interview I did with Alan Steinfeld. He'd written a book about making contact, and he'd pulled together 12 of the leading experts on this phenomena, all of whom presented a chapter. And one of the things that really surprised me in this, and, J.J. Hertak and his wife were very much, they were talking about their research foundation actually looks into advances in technology that we need to develop for interstellar travel, for it to become a reality. And they suggest that life may have originated beyond the Earth, and that non-physical contact may include the presence of higher spiritual beings. Now, we tend to think of ETs, people coming from other planets, but there's quite a bit of evidence that there are also other beings of, perhaps without bodies, energy beings that are also involved in some of these sightings. In fact, I think they were talking about extra celestials and ultra terrestrials. So do you think that we are going to have more evidence of spirit?
Well, I think see, we have a tendency to look at our reality from our reality. It's kind of like trying to fix the problem from the problem. And you got to step out of the box. And once you start to step out of the box of the third dimensional game board, you begin to have a lot of evidence that has always been there that has been dismissed. But right now, that evidence is unfolding. And in my reality, the guiding forces of designing the Mastering Alchemy program were called the Archangelics: Metatron, Michael, Uriel, etc. But when you start to say, well, what is that? Well, first, they were all given male names because that's how the church defined it, the angelic realm. But when you start to play in this is consciousness at a very high level outside of the third dimensional box. And in my case, here's a pathway for your own evolution ascension, elevating the earth and opening the door for humanity to step into their own state of well-being, their own state of higher consciousness. When you start to bring in astrology, which has always been on the table, but made light of, and you start to listen to what the astrology says and look at the results of it, it's pretty impacting. It's very clear something's going on. So when you step out of the box, you begin to recognize that there's so much more that you can't even imagine from this third dimensional space of playing. And it's all now beginning to present. You're going to find, as I've been saying all along here, is new information. It's like the light switch got turned on, and you all of a sudden are becoming aware of things that were unimaginable. So a little while ago, I said, if you can begin to allow your imagination to be real for you, you're going to simply open doors of possibilities that have not been available today. And that's what I think all this galactic presentation is beginning.
The interesting thing is you and I have had many conversations about Carl Callman's work, and he wrote the books, The Global Mind. And, something that was new to me at the time, and this was in 2012 too, was how he said that, the global mind, the consciousness, the collective consciousness is informing everything, and everything is informing us. So it is this constant flow of information between the universe and us,
Yes.
without barriers, that is moving us forward. So how could we make that more real for ourselves? How could we actually participate consciously, in the changes that can bring?
Well, something that we were asked to do about 5 years ago was, it sounds funny to someone listen, but to begin to enhance a new realm of consciousness into the awareness of humanity. And so we did. We created a program where we just kind of sat on a park bench and began to envision a field of consciousness that humanity could step into, of respect and dignity, kindness, grace, gratitude, all of those. And we played establishing that. And out of that, something actually has come about. It's referred to as the octave. And the octave is just simply doubling up from what was. And the architecture of this octave that is being presented and is part of this whole galactic presentation it's an architecture of joy and ease. Ease is a very deep word. Buoyancy. See, things that we don't understand is time and space pass through you. You don't play in time and space. And time and space is one thing, not two things. And when you start to get into a present space and allow everything to come to you rather than going to them out there to tell me I'm okay, your whole perspective shifts dramatically. And when you start to move into this feeling of the octave, which everybody is stepping into right now, just keep it simple, a state of well-being, a buoyancy, an ease, all of a sudden that starts to stick. It's like jumping into water and getting out, you're still wet. And so you begin to have this expanded sensation, and that's what this awareness is that everybody's having. And they're also having the opportunity to begin to see, let's just call it an octave, a whole shift in the light switch was turned on, and it starts to stick and it's staying in your awareness. From that perspective, I'll make another example. If you look at a little piece of graph paper, and we live in one little square, and there are 8 squares around it. And so we believe in God. We believe there's more. We believe in spaceships. We believe in a lot of things that are in this outside area, astrology, that I can't really prove, but I believe. But there's another set of squares around that and another set of squares around that are outside of our capacity to imagine in this human form. And all of that is beginning to illuminate and accelerate. You go back to Carl Kalman's books and the reading of the Mayan calendar, and what he basically says is time, as we understand it, is compressing. It's starting to go faster and faster. You had the printing press that took 400 years for everybody to kind of have an access to it. Now you got artificial intelligence that gives you more than you can possibly grab a hold of in a microsecond.
Yeah.
And so this compression and expansion is going on, and the brain is changing. So you're watching all of this turning on. These electromagnetic waves from the sun are directly affecting the DNA and the RNA messaging system. And here comes the format of the galactic shifts telling humans, look over here. There's a whole nother game available to you.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, how bright can that light get? How big can we think, and imagine?
See, they also say you as a human being are big, significant, important. Especially all the people are playing here. You hold a level of consciousness that has never been experienced before. Going back to the beginning of all of the Mastering Alchemy, what Uriel said on day one is the creator wants to know itself. And so it's always looking for the new possibilities of configuration of vibrations and electromagnetic fields, light and love, to create something new. And you, the human beings, are the creator beings that came here. And so many of you came here and basically said, I want to make a difference. And you pushed your way to the front of the line and you said, send me. And the creator said, well, here, let me explain it to you. You're going to put a bag over your head. You're going to forget who I am. You're going to forget who you are. You're going to go down here into this darkness. You're going to bump around to find your way home. It's now that point where you are all evolving into that finding your way home. And it really comes back to those words. Heart words: certain, capable, gracious, kind, commanding my presence, seniority. When you align with those feelings, you know yourself. And that's this electromagnetic field that is now presenting.
And that's the key, isn't it? I mean, we as a species need to understand who we are.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of work to do, to take off the conditioning and, basically step in to our magnificence.
Yeah, and your whole purpose, well, you've got a number of purposes, but one of the main purposes is to basically love yourself.
Yeah.
We're really good at fixing others, helping others, giving to others. I can't tell you how many times I've heard said, well, when I get it all fixed out there, I'll then take care of myself. No, backwards. Love yourself. Be nice to yourself. Just simply go for a walk and enjoy yourself. As you begin to build that platform of words and you begin to create an awareness that there is a distinction between you and the world out there that says you have to come to me for approval, all of a sudden the game begins to change and you start to get a lot lighter. It's in that space when you're having fun, enjoying yourself, appreciating yourself, and you turn around and there's an older person with 2 bags of groceries and you hold the door open and they say, oh, thank you so much. And you say, my pleasure. That's love.
Yeah.
For yourself. The love is in you. I'm happy to help you, you say. They smile, you smile. That's the purpose.
Yeah.
Shining a level of light for someone else to find their smile.
Yeah. And as we know from, the scientific studies, that generosity and, taking care of others actually makes us healthier and
Yes.
happier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's self-love. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So in our last quarter of the show, or last 10 minutes, what I want to talk about some of the practical things that people can do. You spoke about your park bench project. And I'm assuming that your community gathers and you have some kind of meditation visualization that you take them through.
Yes.
Is this something that anybody can join?
Anybody. Anybody can do. And we found something that's interesting, and in fact, we're going to do this on March 6th, talking about something very fundamental. If you say to people, do you know how to ground? It's like, oh yeah, I ground. In fact, people have no idea what grounding is. We watched it over years. So once you begin to have the ability to take a breath, get into the center of your head, ground the body, most importantly, become aware of present time, because you don't live in the past and you don't live in the future. You live in this moment of now. And when you get into this moment of now, it's in the center of your head, and you begin to recognize that if you just bring your attention into present, quiet, and aware, everything changes. You all of a sudden realize the things you worry about, put your finger in, and the light socket of the politics, climate change, everything else, all of a sudden that all falls away. And as you begin to get into this, and what we've been doing is moving into this octave and simply holding well-being. And so this coming up class is on grounding, finding the center of your head, beginning to establish that platform where you can observe the world, but not be the effect of the world. That's a free class that we're doing on March 6th. So you can go to Mastering Alchemy and get all the information on the website.
Which is a great, a great starting point for many people. Pam Gregory has a 15-minute meditation, free meditation that people can join every Sunday. We know the power of community when we join together and we meditate or, set our sights on something in particular. It's incredibly powerful.
Very powerful. And we're in the process of putting back, expanding that sense of community that we're playing in. And when we put the park bench project together, it was just kind of sit on a park bench. I mean, in your own head, just where you are. What is it like to just sit and observe beauty from a relaxed, comfortable place? Let your body sink into that. That's where the change happens. And so we're in the process of putting back that park bench project as a community project. We had 5,000 people on a Sunday for 20 months playing the game. And we're going to go back and expand that again pretty quickly.
And I wouldn't mind betting that by the end of this year, with so many people waking up, those numbers will have exponentially increased.
Yeah. And I think it's important. So you get lots of different people who are doing those meditations. I'm being an advocate that we all of us get together and basically make it one gathering of tens of thousands.
Yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
One other practical tool that I'd like you to share with people is you talk about the chakras. We all think we know what the chakras are and what they do, but we don't, not fully.
No.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. In fact, in this March 6th piece, we're going to go through the chakras. Something which I'll just say out loud. We have this belief that the chakra is a concave disc that's facing out. That's kind of how the teaching has been for the last 40, 50 years I'm aware of. But when you begin to realign the body and you change this, the chakras are dynamic spheres of light that basically interact with one another. We have a belief, and listening to, again, the last 40 years, people believe that the first chakra, for example, is about survival of the body. That's the label. One of the things that you find as you start to play in Mastering Alchemy, what we found is that the rational mind lives in the first chakra. The ego lives in the first chakra. Ego is so important to you. But what happens is when you have a damaged ego and a rational mind that's trying to protect you from everything and a sense of survival all in one place, you get the third dimensional experience. But when you realize that first chakra, that dynamic sphere of light, has a little sliver of survival, meaning you're standing on the edge of the cliff and the body is going, are you sure about this? Survival. But the rest of it is all about expression, expansion, opportunity. And so when you start to realize that you can change that whole configuration of how the rational mind thinks and fears, how to basically bring the ego back into its alignment with the higher self, because the ego is a part of the higher self, and it's now has the capacity to return to the higher self when simply recognized. And all of a sudden, that sense of expression and opportunity and possibility all get drawn up through the chakras into the heart, and the ability to create balance. Then you're really redefining the whole scope of how a being exists in a fifth dimensional world rather than a third dimensional world. Is that hard? No. It's just somebody just turned on a light switch, and all of a sudden you go, oh, I didn't know that. And you shift from fear and domination, competition, to well-being, respect, and dignity. And the light switch goes on instantly, and that awareness turns on instantly when allowed.
It's really interesting to me how many things that 10, 13 years ago, 20 years ago were regarded as, just made up, woo-woo stuff. We're actually beginning to learn now that this stuff is real. And the practical tools that you teach, are a very grounded way of helping people open up.
Yeah. And these tools are not, it's not like anybody's got a corner on any market. The message is, take a breath, try this. What happened?
Yeah.
Just simply, what happened when you liked yourself? What happened when you got grounded? What happened when you shifted from I'm not okay to laughter? You're not the same person you were holding that attention. And when you realize the past is not fixed, as we've been told forever, the past is very changeable to a very different structure once you understand there's two components to the past. And in fact, a fact that happened and an emotion that you hold yourself hostage to. When you change the emotion, you begin to realize, is that even important to me any longer to hold my attention on? And it falls away.
I want to return to this book, Making Contact, because there were three things that I took from it that are very applicable to this conversation and indeed everything that's going to happen in the coming year. Whitley Strieber, who wrote the seminal book Contact, reported in this book that a US Army colonel told him what an alien had said to him when the colonel asked the alien, "What can you offer us?" And the alien answered, "A new world, if you can take it."
Yeah.
And that's what's in front of us. Yeah.
It's not only in front of us, it's what's unfolding right now. And it's unfolding very rapidly. And it's going to be, we're going to have this conversation again in 2030 is going to look nothing like 2024. That's how fast this is all changing.
Yeah.
It has a lot to do with artificial intelligence. It has a lot to do with the ending of wars. It has a lot to do with it. But I'm venturing to guess that 2030 will not look anything like what we know today.
Just as a side note, what's your view on artificial intelligence?
So there's three parts to artificial intelligence. There's artificial intelligence from a positive standpoint is going to dramatically change the world into a world of abundance. You're going to find things like electricity and energy basically at zero cost. The negative side is artificial is going to be extremely disruptive, not negative, worry, problem. It's going to change how we do everything. But it's no different than when the car came about and replaced the horse. It's no different from when the agricultural harvester came about and replaced the plow. It's no different than electricity coming about and replacing the candle. All of those things were massively disruptive. That's what artificial intelligence. But the third part is the one that's the most disturbing, and it's all the crazies who are playing with artificial intelligence that simply think they can create distruth and disruption and lies. And so you're watching artificial intelligence as a tool be used by people who are ill-minded in what they're doing. And so that's the part that everybody's responding to today in artificial intelligence. But what we know of artificial intelligence is like 0.1% of what will be present in your reality by 2026, 2028, 2030. Unbelievable transformational experience is what we're about to step into.
Yeah. Well, we have the opportunity to write a whole new story, and artificial intelligence has the ability to help us write it if we use it wisely.
Yeah, and what I said at the beginning, consciousness says there is nothing artificial
Yes.
about intelligence.
Yes.
It's just having to be presented in manners to get people into consciousness and aware of themselves.
Jim Self, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sandy, it's always a pleasure.
So Jim Self's Mastering Alchemy program is an interactive series of coursework designed to help you revitalize your energy and inner guidance systems, allowing you to live the life that you came here to live. For more information, visit masteringalchemy.com, where you can also explore Jim Self's books, What Do You Mean the Third Dimension is Going Away?, and A Course in Mastering Alchemy. And you can also download a free book on the shift. That's it for this week. All episodes of this show are available as an audio podcast at omtimes.com and on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Amazon, and Audible platforms, so you can download it and listen on the go. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. Thanks for being with me today. I'll be back with another edition of What Is Going On at the same time next week. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and thanks again to Jim Self.